I don't think I could do this anymore. I don't know why, but I'm okay with walking away from this because there's no way I'm dragging down the leg.
40 years, 4,000 shows, and not once had Jon Bon Jovi stopped one. Then on July 23rd, 2026, halfway through a sold-out night at Madison Square Garden, he walked to the lip of the stage, pressed his hand flat against his chest, and told 20,000 people he could not finish. His bandmates dropped their instruments and surrounded him.
You look up and you see the thing in the ceiling. That's when it all comes to you and you go.
His team blamed a sinus infection, but 4 years earlier, a surgeon had opened up his throat and found one vocal cord swollen to the size of a thumb, the other shrunk to a pinky. That is the story nobody told you. The night the music stopped. Something felt wrong from the very first song. Fans who had sat through the previous 7 nights could hear it immediately. The familiar power was missing, replaced by a thin, strained sound that got worse with every passing minute. This was not an off night. This was a body failing in real time, in front of 20,000 people who had paid hundreds of dollars to witness a comeback. 16 days earlier, on July 7th, the same building had watched that comeback begin.
One of my cords was atrophying, and the strong one was pushing the weak one around, and this one was dying.
Bon Jovi walked out to a cover of "With a Little Help from My Friends" in the gospel arrangement made famous by Joe Cocker. Jon told the crowd he had not heard a live audience in 4 years and thanked them for waiting it out. He played 21 songs that night. The reviews were honest about the difference in his voice, but the set list proved he could carry a full show. By night 6, the set list had started shrinking. Wanted Dead or Alive, and Always, 2 of the band's most demanding songs, quietly disappeared with no public explanation. Nobody announced anything. Fans simply noticed what was no longer being played. On night 8, the band managed 14 songs. On a normal night of this residency, they played between 20 and 23.
But I found a surgeon who did an implant outside of the vocal cords to help them build back to what they needed to be.
By the time they reached Bed of Roses, Jon could barely finish the vocals. He stepped back from the microphone and let the entire arena sing the closing section for him. Before the final song, he addressed the audience with a level of honesty most performers would never show on stage. He told them he knew he was letting them down, and that it was not like him. He said they would do one more song, and that he needed their help because he was hurting badly. Train lead singer Pat Monahan was in the arena that night as a regular fan, with no scheduled role in the show. He was pulled backstage and came out to carry the vocals on "Livin' on a Prayer." Even with Monahan singing most of it, Jon leaned on the crowd to get through.
Slippery When Wet tour. Slippery was one of the biggest records of all time. There's been charitable shows. The Lost Highway tour, the This House Is Not for Sale tour. You know, so many memories here over the years.
When it ended, he told the audience not to throw away their ticket stubs because he was going to figure something out. Then he hugged each bandmate, one by one, gave the crowd a thumbs up, and walked off. His representatives confirmed afterward that he had been battling a sinus infection. One Deadline commenter, who claimed to have attended the infamous 2022 Indianapolis show, the performance that led directly to Jon's surgery, wrote that it was deeply troubling to see the same warning signs 2 weeks into the comeback, which raises the question that show left hanging. If the warning signs were the same ones from 4 years earlier, what exactly had those 4 years fixed? A voice slowly disappearing. The trouble did not begin in 2026. It did not even begin in 2022. It began in 2013, and almost nobody outside the inner circle connected the dots. That year, guitarist Richie Sambora quit hours before a scheduled show in Calgary during the Because We Can tour. Sambora had been in and out of rehab for years, And he later said his departure came down to deep family problems and needing to be there for his daughter. What most fans did not realize was what his exit did to Jon's voice. Sambora was not just the lead guitarist. He was the other half of a vocal partnership that had defined the band's sound for 3 decades. When he walked, Jon carried 80 remaining tour dates singing for 2 people, covering his own parts and every harmony Sambora had handled. Jon told AARP magazine that it was after that tour when everything started to go south, and that he could not figure out whether the damage was psychological or physical. By 2015, the signs were impossible to hide. A growing breathiness, less volume, moments where the pitch slipped. Jon told the How to Fail podcast that his body had crashed out from under him, and that he was not fully aware of how bad it had gotten. So he tried to fix it himself. In the Hulu docuseries, Thank You Goodnight, he listed the remedies: lasers, acupuncture, vitamins, collagen injections, exercise. He pushed through tours from 2015 to 2019, while the instrument he depended on most quietly deteriorated underneath him. Then the pandemic stopped everything. 2 years off the road did not repair the damage. It stripped away the momentum that had been hiding it, and when the band returned in 2022, the decline was undeniable to everyone around him. Everyone, that is, except the one person whose opinion could actually reach him. The words that changed everything. After an arena show in Nashville in 2022, Jon came off stage convinced he had given the crowd his heart. He turned to his wife Dorothea and told her it went well. She told him it was not great, and that she had seen him be great. They have been together since high school, married since 1989, side by side through every chapter of a 40-year run. Jon later told People magazine that the conversation was beyond heartbreaking and devastating, but that there was no one better than her to tell him the truth. He described on a podcast how everyone else around a rock star is either a yes man, someone getting paid, or a fan who wants you to be good. Dorothea was his confessional box, the only person he knew would never hand him false reassurance. And notice what his mind did with it. He told People that when he heard her words, the immediate voice inside his head said it was time to retire. Not time to see a doctor, not time to rest. His first instinct was that it was over. Within days, he went to the hospital. He did not send an assistant. He did not book a consultation for the following week. He got in his car alone and drove. What the doctors showed him next is the reason July 23rd happened the way it did, and it is the part of this story almost nobody outside the docuseries has heard. Subscribe before you go any further, because what comes next is the part everyone quoting that concert clip has skipped. The dying chord. The diagnosis was worse than anything Jon had imagined. One of his vocal cords had atrophied. He explained in the Hulu docuseries that vocal cords are supposed to look parallel, roughly the same thickness. One of his had swollen to the size of a thumb, while the other had shrunk to the size of a pinky. The strong cord was physically shoving the weak one aside every time he tried to sing. In his own words, the cord was dying. The doctor told him this was partly a consequence of aging, that vocal folds thin out over time. But 4 decades of arena anthems, 4 nights a week, had accelerated it far beyond normal. Jon was baffled because he had taken meticulous care of the instrument. He had never smoked, never used drugs, always warmed up before shows and cooled down after. He told The Independent that he had sung with Pavarotti, that he was a trained vocalist who had practiced the craft for 40 years. He had not wrecked his voice through carelessness. It was failing anyway. The surgeon performed a procedure called medialization, placing 2 pieces of Gore-Tex outside the vocal cords but inside the neck. Jon described it in the docuseries as a facelift for the vocal cords. The implant was designed to push the weakened cord back into position so both sides would fire symmetrically again. The surgery worked. The rehabilitation is where the real fight started. 19 months later, Jon still could not commit to a tour. The band had an album ready and no answer to the only question that mattered. He admitted in the docuseries that he had many moments of genuine doubt, that he kept finding what he called a little ray of hope, only to get punched in the nose by some new setback the next day. He told the Today Show that you have to be physically, mentally, and spiritually ready, and that he was not there yet. In April 2024, he told the Sunday Times that if his singing was not great, if he could not be the guy he once was, then he was done, and he was at peace with that. He compared himself to a quarterback facing the last ball he would ever throw. He said he did not ever need to be the Fat Elvis. He had set the terms of his own ending. What he had not counted on was who would refuse to accept them. The brotherhood that held the line. There was no tour on the calendar. There was no date, no announcement, no guarantee that a date would ever exist. And every morning the band showed up to rehearse anyway. Picture it. A room of musicians running songs for an audience that might never be booked, for a singer who might never sing them again. Tico Torres behind the drums. David Bryan at the keyboards. Nobody floated other projects. Nobody floated retirement. Jon told People magazine in June 2026 that the sacrifices each of them made were on a completely different level, that they told him they were with him, and that every day of every rehearsal they were there. He said his love for them had only deepened. Even Richie Sambora, who had not performed with the band since 2013, said publicly he would come back if Jon recovered. He told the Allison Hagendorf show that if Jon got his voice back, he would go play, that he had songs ready and the world needed it. 13 years after walking out, the man whose exit arguably started the chain reaction was holding the door open. In October 2025, Jon walked onto the Today Show and announced the Forever Tour. Madison Square Garden, 9 sold-out nights. 9 nights in under 3 weeks for a voice held in place by 2 pieces of Gore-Tex. What it cost to stay honest. Before he left the stage on July 23rd, Jon told the crowd to hold on to their ticket stubs because he would figure out how to reschedule. Then he told them he felt great and that he would see them again soon. In the days after, the 9th Garden show and all 5 European stadium dates were still listed on the band's official website. Pulling any of them would carry enormous cost, not only for the band, but for tens of thousands of people who had already booked flights and hotels. Here is what separates that night from every other canceled show in rock history. Jon did not send a tour manager out with a microphone. He did not vanish mid-set and let the house lights come up on a confused crowd. In an industry built on illusion, on lighting rigs and managed images, he stood in front of 20,000 people and let them watch him fail, apologize, and ask for help. That was not a performance collapsing. That was a man refusing to fake one. But honesty on that stage costs something specific, and he named the price himself 2 years earlier when he said he did not need to be the Fat Elvis. The man who drove himself to the hospital alone was now facing the exact calculation he thought the surgery had settled forever. The road from here. A voice rebuilt with implants does not behave like a young one. It needs recovery time between shows that a 9-night residency does not allow. Fans have already started saying the obvious out loud. Fewer shows, longer gaps, shorter set lists with more shared vocals, not retirement, but a redesign. The response to that idea has been warm, which is its own kind of answer. Nobody in that arena was asking for 1986. They were asking for him. So the question is not whether Jon Bon Jovi can still sing. It is whether a schedule built for a 30-year-old frontman can ever hold a 64-year-old voice that a surgeon has already rebuilt once. Nothing about this is settled. The remaining dates, the European stadiums, whether the Forever Tour earns its name or becomes the last chapter of one of rock's biggest careers. All of it is unwritten, and when the answer comes, it will come fast. Subscribe so that you get it the day it breaks. And tell us in the comments what Jon should do next.